windy today. Who knows if it'll stop? I guess all that stuff is still happening with all the pandemic, of course. And there's actually some interesting things of people being, I guess, outraged with things like police officers during this time. Well, the first thing I read that was interesting, apparently there are businesses that are being forced to close. As you know, there's a lot of businesses that are deemed as essential service so they can stay open. And I know restaurants, for the most part, you can stay open as long as you have a takeout delivery. So everyone's adjusting, or if they're going inside or whatever, then they have to have some kind of distance, like in the supermarkets. Well, it says here, apparently health inspectors shut down like a Tim Hortons here. This one says, COVID-19, need to know. We suspended the business license of the Tim Hortons, 108 West Pender Street, for 3 days due to violations of the orders from the provincial health officer, and city property use inspectors visited the site on 4 different occasions and issued several warnings. Property use inspectors have visited over 5,800 restaurants and 1,000 personal care facilities and will continue to do so to ensure compliance with the provincial health officer and the City of Vancouver orders to help combat the spread of COVID-19. It does make me wonder though, for things like fast food restaurants, it's kind of amazing for me anyways to read all the stories of people cooking at home, making their own, like, say, coffee or whatever at home, and they find it like so torturous. Isn't that normal? Like, to me, dining out and stuff like that is like a luxury for the most part. I know, but a lot of businesses are obviously suffering and they're encouraging you to go out to these restaurants and all that once everything has basically returned to normal. But yeah, it's just kind of weird how people consider things like cooking your own meal as like some kind of torture. And as you know, a lot of places have this lockdown measure, for example, where they don't want you to leave the house or anything like that. And essentially, in some places, like we read in the story a few days ago, like in the UK, they said you could basically go out if it's for, say, essential needs, for example, going out and getting your groceries, or if you're trying to do your daily exercise or something like that. So that should be okay overall, as long as you don't go around crowded people, don't treat it like a party and all that. So this one was kind of interesting here. Apparently the police were using drones, I guess, to monitor people in various areas, I guess to shame them, to tell them stay at home, you guys aren't helping and so forth. This one here says, for the Derbyshire police, despite posts yesterday highlighting issues of people still visiting the Peak District, despite government guidance, the message is still not getting through. It said they have been out at beauty spots across the county, and this footage was captured at Kerber Edge last night. So yeah, they basically took this drone and I guess they flew around wherever this place is, this Kerber Edge, and they're basically showing you things like this vehicle shouldn't be here, these people walking, etc., shouldn't be here, and so forth. So they're basically, I guess, monitoring everybody with the drone, which is basically a lot of people are doing like in various countries to scold people, like that other one, to tell them to stay home and all that. But I guess because of this, people are actually getting really outraged with the police actually going around with their drones and doing this. Because clearly from the police perspective here, they're saying everything they've shown here, you should not go out of the house at all. But then read some of the comments and stuff here. For example, there's one here, this guy says, you can't police guidance, only the law. The regulations laid today specifically permit exercise outdoors and make no restrictions on travel for exercise. At-risk groups may benefit from walks in more remote locations and densely populated ones near their homes. Another guy says, I think you'd be better employed catching criminals and not on a jolly flying your drone catching people exercising in a remote area. And then the police respond by saying, hi Chris, we are still catching criminals. Our drone unit is highlighting that driving to a beauty spot for a walk is not essential travel. This guy's opinion is kind of like what a lot of people are thinking, I think, in terms of the outrage. It says, this is the worst kind of nanny policing, and I say that as a former colleague. Taking a walk by yourself in the middle of nowhere seems like the epitome of social distancing. And even more saying here, apparently this police force has nothing better to do than harass people who are following government advice, going to remote spots where they will encounter far fewer people than the residential areas. And I guess ultimately the police responded with, if everyone had that attitude, then everyone would be visiting the parks, which is exactly what we're trying to discourage. The government guidance is not to travel unless it is essential. Driving to a beauty spot for a walk is not essential when you can stay local. So it's kind of an interesting debate there. So many different points. Because as I mentioned, based on what I read in the laws and stuff they have in the UK and all that, it's stay at home if you absolutely can, so to speak. Only go out if you need to shop. But they did say specifically you can exercise and all that, which I interpret overall is take it seriously, but don't panic and all that. Keep your distance, etc., etc. Such an interesting topic in so many ways. I guess the first thing is, which side are you leaning towards, as I mentioned before? Are you going to the extreme where you interpret this social distancing stuff, for example, is stay at home 100%? I don't care what it is, do not go out? Or do you go by like what they said with official guidelines? If you need to go out, for example, to do your grocery shopping, then do it and go back. If you need to get your exercise and so forth, then do it in a place where there's not a lot of people. Don't treat it as a joke. Don't hang around like a lot of people, etc., etc. Which one would you side there? And I guess at the same time, with the police using the drones, this is, I guess, what most people feared, like in terms of the general public, correct? They don't want people being, I guess, like they said, like a nanny state, so to speak. It just makes me think, regardless of what it is in life, topics in general, like even with drones, for example, there could be people flying it in a perfectly safe way, yet you have people trying to drone police other people doing absolutely nothing wrong, just because, I guess, the mindset for what you read in the media and everything like that, the impression is one thing versus what was said from official sources is another. With that thought too, there are some services that need to go on as usual and they're deemed as essential. For example, doctors and stuff, obviously. So it made me actually curious what is considered as an essential service, like here, for example, in Canada and BC and all that. And here, basically, there was a list that was released. It says COVID-19, here's what is considered an essential service in BC. Taxis, hotels, weather forecasters, and accountants, some of the dozens deemed as essential service. So apparently from this list, there's a ton of stuff that is deemed as essential, to the point where when I was reading it, even I thought, isn't this virtually everything when you think about it? Now the first topic, for example, it talks about health and health services. For example, it says all healthcare services, including acute care, hospitals, coroner service, etc., etc. Like that you would expect, correct? Basically, they're an emergency, they need to help people. Law enforcement, again, yeah, I can see that. Critical infrastructure service providers, like here, it sounds like it's almost everything, like infrastructure, drilling and production, refineries, processing, etc., etc., transportation. So in that sense, again, it's almost like everything if you think about it there. And it goes on and on and on, but I guess one of the most interesting things too is like here, some of you even joke like you think I should be in essential service during times like this. It says here, communications, information sharing, and information technology, IT. Workers maintaining IT and communications infrastructure for medical facilities, government facilities, emergencies, etc., etc. It says newspaper, television, radio, online news outlets, and other media services. Doesn't that include people like me, for example? I guess like broadcasting stuff online and all that? Or is it the second I show things like squirrels or drone footage, then that's it. It's not deemed as essential anymore. But again, just by reading like the whole list and all that, it seems like almost everything could be considered as essential. Like even for the category under like food and agriculture, like it says here, for retail, grocery stores, convenience stores, farmers markets, and other establishments engaged in retail sale or provision of food, pet, or livestock supply, liquor, cannabis, including producers, and any other household consumer products such as cleaning and personal care products. That is so broad. That basically classifies almost every single store that can open up, isn't it? Businesses that home supply, hardware, building material stores, pawnbrokers, and garden centers and nurseries. I guess I can see how on one end, if you make it too, I guess, restricted, there could be essential stuff that you just don't realize. Like just an example, I know the majority of the population, when you read things online, they say everything should be closed except for law enforcement, like police officers and medical workers. But if you sit there and think about it, okay, what if their vehicles break down, for example? Now you need something like a mechanic or something, correct? Like a lot of people actually don't think about that. So it makes you wonder if it's, I guess, okay to have like a list this big. I think they said themselves more of these rules and stuff is to give them authority to enact on stuff if needed. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see what is considered essential during this whole pandemic. fight with?
Is that your coffee mug or someone else just left it?
Someone else's.
It's not yours, eh?
I don't drink coffee.
Making nice squirrels.
He's afraid of you. That means keep away, that's the sound he's saying. Oh really? Yeah. Well, because he's used to seeing me, but he's not used to seeing you, so he's getting afraid.
Oh, it's used to seeing you?
Yeah.
Right?
That's why he's making that sound. He's like, who are you? Hey, looks like the rain stopped for a bit. I guess I'll have to use the Mini for today. Alright, see you guys later.